challenging feminism. So all of the, in academia, for years now, they've been teaching that the patriarchy has been suppressing women since the dawn of time, and that women are the underdogs of men and always have been throughout history. Well, I'm here to tell you that's actually rubbish. Men and women have worked together, and most men and women throughout history have had no power. The landowners in whatever country you're in, or the king or the queen, have had enormous power, and the people who are just below them have enormous power over the peasants, whatever country you're in throughout history. But to say that men have always had absolute power over all women is ridiculous. Look at any family. Often in a family, the person who runs the family, heads the house, is the wife. And I don't have a problem with that. It's true. Or the grandmother. Women are held in great esteem in families. We've lost a lot of the family now, with there being less and less fathers. A lot of women are choosing not to have men in the family now, which is wrong, because boys and girls miss out, the woman misses out, and the man certainly misses out. We've been doing this for a long time, and we have a lot to do with, if people remember, Fathers for Justice, the men who used to climb buildings in Superman costumes, or Batman, or the Incredible Hulk costume. They did it because of the way they'd been treated, and the divorce courts are still closed. People don't see the way men are treated. And the reason we oppose feminism is because the courts, academia, the health system, everything, they get all their information about gender, about what men and women are, from feminists. In the 70s, the equality feminists, we had some good equality feminists, and some of those feminists, they speak out now, who have remained equality feminists, and they get shouted down by third and fourth wave feminists today. They get told to shut up, and they get there often, if they have a conference, they get fire alarms put on, they get horns blown by social justice warriors, which come from universities, and they block free speech. I give a leaflet out from a man who was a feminist in the old days. He believed in equality, and he knew that things had to be changed for women in the old days, in the past, in the 70s. He realizes now that feminism is not about equality. It's about jobs for feminists. Feminists don't like traditional women. They don't like men. They don't like working class men. A lot of young women will say, I'm a feminist, because they believe in equality and they believe in women's rights. Most people believe in women's rights. There's a thing about sexism. We dealt with sexism. We did a lot to deal with sexism that women faced in our society, but we never dealt with the sexism that men face. And there's a lot of assumptions which are made in our society about men. And when we look at history, where the men had obligations which women never did have, and there was common sense to a lot of it, but we overlook all of that, like war, for example. Right here where I'm standing is where Emmeline Pankhurst and the suffragettes were handing out white feathers to boys as young as 10 for not being in uniform, for being in the First World War. A white feather's for cowardice if you're not from Britain. And a lot of men had come back from the front and might have had a false leg, or had injuries, or were just given time off and were out of uniform. They were given white feathers, not by working class women, but by upper class women. And this, what we're dealing with when we're challenging feminism, we're not degrading women, we're not doing anything like that. What we're doing is we're talking about things about actual feminists. In Parliament, that they've got legislation on the family. There's no mention of fathers in it. And they've dominated the whole subject of very emotive subjects which upset most people, about domestic violence. And domestic violence is not about gender. It's not about enforcing the patriarchy over women. Domestic violence is an inherited thing through the family. What's the term I want, Richard? It's generational. It's in the family. Most people who come from violent families They don't know how to resolve issues in families, and people tends to go with like. In one of the first, Erin Pezzi, she said the woman she could help, she says she opened the first battered women's home over in Chiswick in the 70s. The woman she could help were the women who were in bad relationships. They were the women they could help. They went with the wrong man and they were mistreated. She said out of the first 100 women in her shelter, 62 of them were as violent as the men or more violent. And they often went back to the same man or went and found another man that had the same way of looking at life or the way of dealing with issues as they did. So it was a family thing. It came from families. Couples got together, and often there was alcohol involved and all sorts of things. It's to do with early childhood and being brought up in a violent environment, and I know this myself because of the background I came from in my family. It's not about men, and when the feminist lens looks at men, it always looks at the negative things. It looks at it talks about brutality, it talks about dominance, it talks about that. Actually, I find a lot of women today are incredibly dominant. We don't look that it's both. If I was in an army of men and I'd look behind me and see there would be some men in that army I wouldn't want to go near, I wouldn't like. If I was a woman in an army of women, I would do the same. There would be women, individuals in that army that would be dangerous people as well, and I wouldn't want to go near them. It's about both. This rhetoric which we've been bombarded with through the school system, through the media about men and women is rubbish. Judge people as you meet them. And a thing that's very important in our society now, we're having people who are working class people or middle class people who should actually have a reasonable retirement now, and they're all counting pennies. The reason is the vast amounts of money which is going to women's charities, which are run by feminists. And the money goes to them is because it's an emotive thing, because men and women care about women. They care about women more than they do about men. The only men we seem to care about are the ones that might be driving a big car, are incredibly handsome and are wealthy and well educated. The majority of men are not like that. In England, the homeless, over 90% of them are men. They are not powerful men. People don't see them, they're invisible. In Britain today, 12 or 13 men a day commit suicide, and there's no help. And often in marriage, after a marriage is broken up and the man is prevented from seeing his child, even if the court says he has the right to, suicide rate is incredibly high, and we don't look at that. This is not fighting talk or aggression. This is about getting people to think and not just hand money to ideologues who are quite extreme in their beliefs about men and women. And most of them are upper class people, by the way. Upper class people, and a lot of them, there's a large percentage of lesbian women who don't like men. There are lesbian women who do, but you tend to get the most radical feminists are often upper class women and lesbians who don't like men. Or women who've been brought up with mothers who didn't like men and they don't know men. Women who don't like men often don't know men, and they never had a father, a caring father. I'm not giving an answer here. What I'm doing, I'll just explain. I'm challenging feminism. We come here and we challenge feminism, modern feminism, and what it says about men and women, and why it's sexist, and why it's not about equality. And it's a very, very emotive subject, a huge subject, because we've had slogans for years talking about what men are, the negative things, all about men. And yet we very rarely ever hear negative things about women, not because I want to hear it, it's because it tends to be just one way. And what I'm asking people to do is start to look at what some of the earlier, not the radical toxic feminists from the 70s, some of the earlier equality feminists were saying. And of course things have changed incredibly since the 70s, and the issues are often different. But the family is a very important thing, and men and women working together is a very important thing. So that's that for now. Thank you.